Greetings, salutations, hello, and welcome to Dreadlocks Q&A episode 62. I'm filming from my bed today, and that's not because I've given up on the world and decided just to stay in bed all day. It's because the sound of the city is so loud outside that it's like impossible to film, because every time I press record, there's like a group of people who are just like waiting and go, "He's pressed record! Quickly, start all the power tools!" And it's insane. It's like filming on a building site. Also, I don't wear shoes or socks at home, and I went outside to try and film, and it is so hot outside that I've actually burnt my feet. So I'm staying in the shade with my feet now. So most of you know the drill by now. Excuse the pun, drill, building noise. I've got 5 questions that have been left for me by you guys, viewers. I'm going to hopefully produce somewhere in the region of 5 decent answers for those questions, but let's see how it goes. First question is from Abby Carpenter, and Abby asks, question, do you still get loops? I love them! So being in the loop lovers group is probably to be in the minority group. Most people dislike their loops, their lumps, their bumps, and are pretty happy to get rid of them. Some people forcibly going in with the crochet hook just to get them gone. Lumps, bumps, loops form when the dreadlocks are young, mainly in the original length. So you start off with a certain length of hair. As that hair shrinks up and tightens into dreadlocks, it doesn't always shrink and tighten evenly. Some parts will become tighter than other parts, and so the loose parts get pushed out, forms lumps, bumps, loops. As the dreadlocks get older, they will continue to tighten throughout, and those loose parts can get tightened up, and it can pull down those loops, bumps, and loops. The new growth forms a lot more slowly, a lot more gradually. So instead of shrinking up, it just sort of comes out slowly, and so you don't really get anywhere near as many loops, bumps, or loops in the new growth. All my dreadlock length is new growth. All the original length that had more lumps, bumps, and loops on it has been trimmed off over time. So I really do not have any lumps, bumps, or loops. There's probably like little ones, but really nothing noticeable. I just sort of have slight waviness to some dreadlocks, but that's about it. For some people, there'll be like a sigh of relief there, knowing that at some point the lumps, bumps, and loops phase will be gone. But if you are a lover of the lumps, bumps, and loops, then it might be a bit disappointing. AAGMPA. Is there a sign showing that everything has been adequately rinsed out while washing? I wash with a handful of bi-carb and rinse well, but I'm never sure as to whether I've done it perfectly. Is there a texture, consistency, or marker that I can look out for? There is no surefire way to know that you've gotten everything out, whether you wash with soap, shampoo, bi-carb, whatever. You can never be 100% certain that everything's come out. There's no like obvious sign. I remember when I first started my dreadlocks and I had a really poor soap for doing it, and I didn't know how to use it, and I came out the shower and I was drying my hair and I squeezed, and the actual bubbles, little bubbles coming out of the dreadlocks. That is a surefire way to know you've done a bad job. But for most people, you're only going to be dealing with slight traces of build-up. I don't think you can ever be 100% certain you've got everything out. I think there's always going to be slight areas of the dreadlock that you might have missed or not been able to rinse out properly. I have a system, you know, I work soap into my scalp, let it rinse down, and then I will go around and squeeze all the dreadlocks multiple times, and that's as the best job that I can do. But even then, I'm sort of aware that there's going to be bits that I've missed, and there's going to be slight bits of build-up, even with a really good residue-free shampoo or bi-carb, whatever you're using. And I sort of accept this, and that's why I deep clean my hair every few months, because I sort of accept that over a long enough period of time there will be a bit of build-up, but I just deep clean that out later, and as long as it doesn't get built up to a noticeable degree, it's not going to be an issue. Isabella Jensen, question, is it possible to have 1 to 3 dreads amongst regular hair? If so, how would one maintain them? Yes, it's quite popular to have partial dreadlocks or pet dreadlocks at the moment. I get lots of questions about them. I'm not the world's biggest fan. I don't have a problem with them, but I don't think that it's something that I'd want to live with. Basically, the thing that makes dreadlocks great is that they will form by themselves over time. So it's not so much here I'm making my hair into something, it's here I'm not making my hair into something, and so by itself it will do this if you leave it long enough. So I don't really have to do anything to my hair ever apart from wash, dry, and occasionally separate if things start to go mad. And the problem with partial dreadlocks is that the process that makes dreadlocks so great, in that hair will knot up and mat itself by itself, you don't actually want that to happen with partial dreadlocks, because if you allow that to happen, the dreadlocks that you have will absorb all the surrounding loose hair, and you will go from having partial dreadlocks to having a full head of dreadlocks. The main thing that people ask about with partial dreadlocks is how do you wash them. The washing isn't difficult, because you can use a dreadlock shampoo on everything. You should use a dreadlock shampoo to keep the dreadlocks happy, and it will work fine on the regular hair as well. The complication comes with conditioning, because you want to keep the loose hair really well conditioned and brushed to make it less likely to get absorbed by the dreadlocks. dreadlocks, but you don't want to get the conditioner on the dreadlocks and you can't brush the dreadlocks, so it can become a bit complicated. How you actually deal with that is going to vary from person to person. Some people will condition their hair by washing the hair in the sink. Some people will use sort of spray and brush out conditioner, but it's really going to depend on where the dreadlocks are in relation to the rest of the loose hair. And the main thing you got to think about with partial dreadlocks is that you have to constantly be aware that the dreadlocks may be trying to knot up the loose hair and you have to separate it back out, and that can be like constant work for the lifetime of the dreadlocks. How much work is required is going to vary depending on the individual person. Some people have to separate a lot more than others. I will link to my partial dreadlocks video in the description. Eric Hoogvliet, what's the average price to get dreadlocks at a salon? If you collected up the prices that everybody charges and divided those prices up by the number of people, you would get an average price. I, however, do not have that data. The prices that people pay, there's a huge variation. When I started my dreadlocks, I paid £60. When my girlfriend started her dreadlocks, she paid the equivalent of over £500 when she had hers started in Norway, although she did have extensions. I've seen people in the United States get quoted over $1,000. How much you pay is going to vary like so much depending on who's doing the work, sort of where it's being done, what country, what city, what method they're using, whether there's going to be extensions involved, and how much hair you have. The more hair you have, the more work it's going to be to lock them up, the more hours will be required. So I can't sort of give you a figure that's going to be accurate for all people or even relevant to all people, because different people in different places are going to have different sort of standards for how much they will pay for starting dreadlocks. So I don't want to give a number because for some people in some places it's just not going to be at all applicable. I will link in the description to my International Dread Makers directory, where you can find listings for different people around the world who start and maintain dreadlocks, so you can see if there's anyone sort of within your area that you can contact to get a quote if that is something that you're interested in doing. Ali Hintsala, question: I started my dreads in May and I know that the beginning months to the first year are going to be messy and unpleasant and not so appealing. Anyway, I'm asking if it's okay to use a bandana to hold them back instead of a tam, because school has a no hat policy. Bandanas are certainly popular. They're sort of in between a hat and no hat, I guess. It's kind of like a big headband. When I had young dreadlocks, I would always have a headband on. So a headband thicker than this is just like a thick string, elastic string pretty much. But I used to have a wide one. It wasn't a full-on bandana because I don't know how you actually tie those, but it's just a thick headband, and I would use that to sweep the dreadlocks out of my face and sort of cover up loose hair that was falling in my face, and that worked for me. You can tie your dreadlocks up, you can put them in the hat, you can do what you want. You just have to be aware that there's a balance between if you stop the dreadlocks from being able to move, if you sort of restrict the movement of the hair, you're going to inhibit its ability to form new knots. But yeah, you've got to balance up what's best for the dreadlocks versus what's actually best for you living your life. While having them tied up or wrapped up or whatever can potentially slow them down, whether that leads to anything that's actually noticeable is arguable. And as long as you don't have them tied up in something 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's not going to be a huge worry really. If you just have them tied up while you're doing a day's work or while you're at school, then I think that's probably a fairly decent balance. And if the bandana is what does it for you, then, you know, that's great. You have to make the dreadlocks work for you as well as you working for the dreadlocks. Those are my questions for this week. If you liked this video, found it helpful, useful, informative, enjoyable, all those great things, all likes are appreciated. If you'd like to leave a question to be answered in a future Q&A video, you can do so by leaving it in the comment section below, starting a question with the word question. If you'd like to see more videos from myself in the future, you can of course subscribe. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you again next time. Farewell!